About 10 years ago, a lot of Army bases started closing. And when they closed, all their warehouses no longer had a need for these locks. And so they started to appear on eBay and a lot of other lock picking sites. So I know a lot of you have them. I see a lot of discussion about how to open them, and most people don't have keys. And I think I can explain that, and I'll tell you how I got my locks. I worked at an Army depot, and it was undergoing closure as part of the base realignment and closing. And anyway, the warehouseman had to turn in all the locks when they emptied all the bunkers out. And when he went to supply to turn them all in, the Army doesn't account for locks, believe it or not, but they do account for keys. So he had to turn in the keys for destruction, and by doing that, that represents the destruction of the entire lock system. And these are really tough, so they'd be hard to destroy anyway. So anyway, he knew I was interested in locks. He brought me a bucket of them. He drank all my beer and he left. It turned out to be a pretty good trade. Anyway, let's talk about how to pick these things. And I've been working on this for 2 years. When I first looked into this, I figured, well, they're abloys. When you look inside of there, you see a bunch of little discs, and I think I might be able to get a light down inside of there. You get an idea of what it looks like inside of there. I looked up abloys, and abloys have a lot of discs and a lot of different places on them for false gates and real gates, and it turned out to be there's 72 billion combinations. So for me to try to get in there and pick each one of those 72 billion, I mean, that'd take 2-3 hours, right? Or the rest of my life, and I wasn't that interested, so I kind of gave up. Until about 2 years ago, I took one of these locks and I cut it open. I pulled out the disc pack. Actually, I didn't pull it out, it fell out onto the floor. And here's what it looks like. So I need you to understand what we're looking for. When I looked at that disc pack, what I discovered is that most of the disc, and this represents one of the discs, is unused. There were no cuts on it. And when I looked at the discs, there were cuts in only 3 locations. Now, abloys have cuts every 15 to 18 degrees, but these locks have cuts only every 45 degrees. And what I did notice, I saw a pattern, they were only in 1 of 3 locations. And for convenience, I've labeled them 0, 45, and 90, because we're going to refer to that when we start picking our lock. Now, if there are only 3 discs, and there's only 3 possible positions, so 3 positions raised to the number of discs means there's a total of only 27 different possible combinations for these type of locks. Well, I thought that was interesting, so I built myself a spreadsheet and came up with 27 combinations, and I built this little chart. Well, if you look at the chart, you notice that there's only 17, and that's because we know that these are high security locks. And high security locks will not allow the key to be removed while it's unlocked. So any combination that allows the key removal when it's locked or when it's unlocked, we could discard it, and I was able to kick out 10 of them. Now, once I had a list of these numbers, a little table, I still didn't know which one opened my locks. So that meant I had to pick each one of my locks 17 times, and your positioning pretty much had to be perfect. Sometimes you had to cycle through a couple of times. So I knew there had to be a way, and in fact there is. There's actually 4 ways to figure out which key number we need. Well, the first way, if you have an older lock, like this old guy, you'll notice that it has stamping, if I can get it oriented correctly here. These things are heavy. Come on, focus. If you look on the side, you can see we have S and G for Sargent and Greenleaf, 0142. And then when I started this, I thought that was the year of manufacture. I had no clue. I thought January 42. Wow, that's a really old lock. And I was only partially right. It is Sargent and Greenleaf. It is 1942 manufacture, but the 01 represents the key number. Which key? Well, I needed a way to associate those keys with my table. When I looked at some of the newer locks, they have no stamping on the sides, nothing. In fact, there's no marking anywhere except when you look at the top. This is where they put their Sargent and Greenleaf, and then there's this plug, a stainless steel plug that's permanently pinned in place, but it has again a 01. It's upside down, but I think you can figure that out. We got a 01. Again, that's where the new ones mark the key number. Now the old ones might have done it that way as well. But the old ones didn't use stainless steel. So when you look at these, it's some of those really old ones, like this 1942. He's been working for a long time for the government. He's really rusted out. So it might have been stamped, but it's probably on the side. They probably realized it wasn't. Okay, so, well, how do I determine the cuts? How do I determine the key number? Well, thank goodness for the internet. I started watching people do their cutting, or their videos on YouTube, and I looked at the cuts of the keys. I cropped out portions of the video, and I started analyzing the different keys. So this guy, whoever he was, said I have a 102 key, or I saw it on the bow, the 102, and then I was able to kind of look at different shots to figure out key 102. So in this case, the cut near the bow was 45, and then we have a 0 cut, and then the tip is a 90 cut. And then it got even better, because it turns out these keys, because most of them were destroyed, they are collector's items. So people post them for sale for big money. I wish I had some real keys, they'd be worth a lot. These things sell for like 50 bucks, but here's one perfectly shown, key 102, and you can see the cuts perfectly, 45, 0, and a 90. So by knowing that, and by doing the research and looking at people's videos, I fold out the little table here, and I was able to associate key numbers with specific cuts. So for example, key 102 that we just looked at, you saw 45, a 0, and a 90. Perfect. And by coincidence, that coincides with the chart that I've just shown you here. And we'll get more into that in a minute. Now I've got a lock chucked up that we're going to pick, and it is a lock 103. So we're looking for these cuts, a 45, 90, and a 45. So let's play with that. The other way you can figure it out is once you get your chart together, you can be stupid like me, and you can get on a grinder and get yourself some drill rod, and you can start cutting each of the keys and trying them. But believe me, that's not the smart way to do it. It took forever, and it turned out to be a lot of wasted effort. The last way we can do it is to pick the lock, and that's what we are talking about here. So now let's get down to picking the lock. Well, here's what the disc pack looks like, and we need to find some way to rotate this disc pack. Now this is in the unlocked position. So when we looked at our chart, all of our measurements are taken from the rightmost position. So the first thing we need to do is turn our disc pack. Now there's a lot of ways to do that. There's the dumb way, which is how I always do things. I got a piece of feeler gauge and I ground out a little tool. This end is designed to turn my disc pack, and this end is designed to turn each individual disc. Then later I saw somebody who was a lot smarter than me. They used a Peterson wrench, and it works just as good. So don't make your own tool, but because I made it, we're going to take advantage of it. So the first thing we want to do before we pick this lock is rotate everything to the complete rightmost. We want to follow this arrow as much as we can. So that's what we're going to do. And now you can see it's completely rotated to the right, and now this is our 90, this about is our 45, and then there's our 0. Now if you can't remember that, you can always mark on the bottom of a lock. So you can show your 90, 45, and 0. So you can look at the disc pack and simply align them. So since this is a lock 103 and we're looking for 45, 90, 45, the first thing I would do is I'm going to rotate all of the disc packs to 45. That way I've only got to manipulate one. So let's do that. I'll try to keep my finger out, but I'm going to rotate it, and we're going to get it as close to 45 as we can. Let me see if we're there. Be a little patient with me. I'm trying to work around the camera. Okay, I think that's pretty close. Now all we need to do is rotate that center disc to 90. So, and again, I'm going to have to turn the lock so I can get access to it. I'll still keep it in frame though. So we turn that center disc, if I can get my pick on him, to 90. Come on, Bill. This always works so well when there's no camera in the way. Okay, now we have rotated the center one to 90. Okay, now here's the trick. Not really a trick, it's just, I guess, the idiosyncrasy of the lock. If you have an old lock, only one of these disc packs will rotate, because right now everything's aligned. We just need to rotate to allow the safety bar to fall. If you have an old lock, only one of these discs will turn the entire disc pack. So the way you go about it, just pick the first one and try to turn it. And if only the first disc turns and you can see the others don't, put him back. Move to the second disc, try to turn him. If only he turns and the others stay in their same position, put him back. Then of course it has to be the third disc. When you turn him, the entire disc pack will turn. Now you're going to see that right now. On newer locks, any disc will turn the entire disc pack. So I'm going to try to keep my hand out of the way. I'm going to put the pick on the first disc, and what you will notice is that everything will rotate past the 0 mark and it will keep going further than the 0. Remember the 0 mark, I can straighten this up so you can see, the 0 mark was right here. So we went about 45 degrees past that 0 mark, and of course when we do that, we're open. No sounds, no clicks, no nothing. And then if you want to lock it back, put it in, rotate your disc back to the original position, and now you're locked up. Anyway, that's how you pick these things. No big secret. Everybody's very secretive about it. I don't know why, but there you go, very easy. If you think that you would like to try to pick one of these things, I have a whole bucket of them that have been sitting around for probably 10 years. If you think you might like to have one, please drop me an email. I'll put my email address in the notes portion. I will not sell them, but if you have an interesting lock that you'd like to trade that maybe I could do a video on, I would certainly appreciate it. I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, thanks for your time. Everybody stay safe and stay legal.